Hi, I'm John Pentland. I wanted to take an opportunity to be in conversation with you. This is going to take a number of minutes. I don't know how long. It's not scripted, it's not prescribed. It's really a chance to be in conversation with you uh, about COVID and the COVID connection and how it connects to our church. So if you listen to this by doing other things at the same time, kind of like an iPod, no, not an iPod, what do you call
Podcast.
it? Podcast. Go ahead. Uh, this is really just wanting to get this off my chest and share some about your church during the last 3 months. What a time this has been. This is something I've been in ministry 31 years. This is totally new. For the church that's 112 or 13 years old, totally new. We are living in a remarkable time of brand newness to how to be church, how to do church. And so we've been living in it. And we are part of the larger conversation around the whole COVID crisis, the pandemic, the season of pandemic. And I want to reflect on that with you, to have a record of it, but also to set the stage for the town hall meeting, the congregational meeting, which you have an opportunity to hear more fully from a variety of staff. So I just wanted to begin by saying that, when all of this happened, literally we were in a bit of a crisis. It was like, oh, this is real. What do we do? Do we keep the church open? Do we close? What's the right thing to do? And I remember it was March 13th or 14th when the staff, Ann and Dawn and I and the other staff got together with some advice from a doctor on the board. The call was to close the church, stop worship. And it was a day I'll never forget as we scurried around, sent out a message about saying that we wouldn't have worship regularly on Sunday. That was the beginning of the real changes that took place in the church. That first Sunday, and I believe the next one, Dawn and I led worship together, stumbling through with the music people how to do church in a new way online. Normally, like going back 3 months ago, prior to that 3 months, we'd have 40 people on a Sunday. Suddenly we were doing this with full attention on you, wherever you were, and doing this online. I believe in one of those sermons I said that we're in collective grief. We were experiencing shock and anger and denial and depression. And then we were hopefully going to get to some kind of acceptance of the rhythm that COVID was bringing, which I think we're at now, some acceptance of the craziness of these days. But that depression brings with it all of those feelings of anger and denial and frustration. And I know you will have experienced this yourself in your own personal life, in your work life, in your relationships, in your neighborhood, and even with the church. And so just even to recognize, oh, this is a different time. And so the church had to respond by how do we do church differently? And so we did close the building, but we recognized that the church opened, and it opened widely in a new way. We have experienced growth in our church in a variety of ways, because now people are watching church, and I use that phrase, watching church like Netflix, through Facebook, YouTube, or the website. And we've moved from 40 people watching on a Sunday to more like 400 devices, which means that the church actually throughout the week expands to something like 1,500 people. Suddenly our church was providing a service that was reaching people from just around the corner to South Africa, the furthest you could be from here. And so the church grew wider and bigger. Now, we didn't know how to do that, and we're still learning how to do that. We're used to just showing up on Sunday at 9:05 or 10:45 and doing a service. If we make mistakes, we laugh, we get frustrated, we change, and we start over the next time. But when you're recording, there's something different. There's a different aspect of understanding how to be in relationship to you. It feels like a bit of a vacuum for me to sit in my office in this chair with Ann behind the camera and us having a conversation. The same with worship. Worship is really about a relationship between the speaker and the listener and the people gathered. We tried to fix that, if you will, by having pictures in the pews, and you've seen the pictures of a variety of people, and we played around with that by having Barack Obama or the Pope or who's the guy that hides?
Waldo.
Waldo, where's Waldo? People like that, just to have some fun with it. But truly, having your pictures there really helped, because we could see you in your place and imagine the regular people sitting there. And that relationship was helped by that. But we're totally aware that we're doing church differently. We stumbled on doing the sermon part as an interview. It sort of began with Barb Higgins, if you will, going back, and you're welcome to look to see what we did, and a conversation with her about trauma and stress, because we were starting in on this. And then that worked, if you will, and so we continued on and on and on. And you'll notice, and I've ordered these, we did theologians. Brian McLaren, couldn't be a finer theologian around. Harry Meyer from Vancouver School of Theology on the Apocalypse. Catherine McLean on the Trinity from Edmonton. Bill Phipps and Carolyn Pogue right from Calgary on climate change. Sheena Trotter-Dennis, our staff person. So we had theologians in those conversations, and we realized if you're doing church differently, you can't just do it the same way. And so the interviews were playful, and they were trying to dive into what the theological issue was and how it mattered to the moment, how it connected to COVID. We also connected to city connectors like David Gray. Talk about a person who's in conversation with Calgarians every day about what was going on through that process. So a chance to ride my bike over and meet and be in conversation with him was a chance for him to reflect with us about what he's hearing about COVID. We playfully made bread with Julie Van Rosendahl, again, a Calgarian who knows about food and knows how food works and how important it is. Theologically, food is essential. The bread of life, the whole story of bread and food and nurture and outreach, food is essential. And so to play with her in the rain, making bread was so fun. And so if you think about it, those theologians and city connectors helped us to do our work. You see, the preacher doesn't do the work, the listener does the work. By you reflecting on your life, what matters, what daydreaming happens, helps you go deeper in what's important to you. And so in the music, which was excellent, provided by a variety of people and people from this community, we provided music and hymns and reflections that I think helped worship happen in a new way. But it was hard, I noticed in the review that people gave us that some said it was too heady. Yes, it is. We're aware that when you're doing an interview, when you're doing the kind of talk I'm doing at this very moment with you, it's hard to feel that relationship. You know me, it doesn't take much for me to cry, but it's hard for me to cry on screen. But in relationship, when I'm in the sanctuary and we're doing a sermon and we're relating, I can see your laughter, I can see your tears, I can feel myself relating in a different way. Doing church online and through interviews is challenging, but we've tried hard to build that connection with you. Dawn and I have also provided sermons, and I invite you to go to the website and find a way to see all that's been said and done through these theologians, city connectors, and your ministers. The thing that's really interesting to me is how this has grown our church. That we have an online community of very regular attenders who watch and participate and comment in our worship experience. And that whole way of being is changing. And we're just in the middle of it trying to understand how it works. When this church was built and they said it was a 7-day-a-week church, I don't think they had any clue, neither did I 5 months ago, what that would mean when the building is closed. Because this camera, this way of connecting through Zoom, has blown our church wide open. Through our spiritual formation community on Monday nights and daily and on Wednesdays, and the book club and the other groups, the numbers grew. So instead of having 20 people maybe showing on a Monday night, suddenly we're 40. When we do a book study at noon on Wednesday, instead of 7 or 8 people, we have 60 people enrolled who are showing up. So the Zoom, while it's frustrating as all get out, I can probably do 3-4 hours a day max through meetings either personally or with groups. The Zoom is a way of connecting, and I'm meeting with people who live in other parts of the city or in Montreal, parts of the country, to be in conversation. And it blows my mind that the church, though closed, is open and bigger in a new way that I don't even yet understand. And so the Zoom way of being church is really something for us to think about, and think about how is this changing how people can participate and connect. It's hard to connect because we're missing the physical touch. we're missing seeing people. We're missing the laughter. We're missing the tears. We're missing the off-the-cuff conversations. If you go back to my sermon about 3 weeks ago, I said one of the things I'm missing is touch. Because whether it's a pat in the back or a handshake or the passing of the peace, those touch points connect us. And most often in worship services on Sundays, it's the off-cuff. Someone says, oh, my cousin died, or my friend's in the hospital, or I had a great golf game, or I'm worried about test results, or whatever. Those off-the-cuff conversations touch us and connect us. And that's really hard with Zoom because it doesn't happen the same way. I find Zoom kind of formal. Someone speaks and we wait, and someone speaks and we wait, and then that ongoing flow of conversation isn't present. But we're trying to understand how it works. And so your church on Sundays and throughout the week have continued. Our board meetings have continued. I've done a COVID wedding where we connected 25 people outdoors by string so we could feel the tension and the connection one to the other. Hospital visits have been made, visits to hospice. Our congregational care has increased. As people have asked for help, we've been able to respond. So it's really important if you're out there and you're feeling cut off or alone or want to connect, you have to tell us because we're not going to see you or notice the same way, and it requires you to step up so that we can connect. We've also been amazed that our outreach to homeless folks who are right outside the building and in the inner city are connected to by a gentleman in the congregation who takes out basic supplies for people. We had lay people in the congregation make masks, and we playfully put those out on the steps of the church, and they all disappeared literally in 24 hours. Probably 150 of those have gone out as ways of being connected and providing support for us, recognizing that wearing the mask doesn't protect me, it actually protects you, and that act of protecting another person during this very difficult time. And so things that we tried to do have just continued. It's strange to be in this building and not have people pop in, to see the groups that go on, to see the knitters, to see the women's spiritual group, to see the elderhood group. All of these are happening, but just not in this building. And we're doing our very best to try to connect with people. Our church, through Anne in particular, has been able to reach out to other churches. We had a bit of a heads up by doing online worship before COVID, but we've been able to help since COVID came to other churches so that they could learn how to do this. And she's reached out to over 15 churches within the United Church to help them connect with their communities. Our public theology, which you'll hear me speak about in the report, has been big. That is, people are looking to Hillhurst, and we've been involved in whether it's myself or staff people or lay people in public theology, commenting on our experience of COVID, commenting on Black Lives Matter, commenting on issues that relate to the Green Line, as an example. A whole way in which our public theology has expanded during COVID. And this is essential. If we're just about us, we're in trouble. Yes, we have to take care of ourselves. Yes, we have to nurture ourselves. We have to be engaged in what's going on out in the world. And that has been rich and deep and important ministry. And it evolves with time. And so when things happen in the world, the media call and say, what's your perspective? And we do have a perspective, and we do step out and say why we're not opening. Or we do say our comment on George Floyd's death, or our comment on the Green Line, etc. And so that's an important part of what we do as a community of faith. So what I want you to know is that this is real. This is hard. We have cried. We have laughed. We have been angry. We've been totally joyful. We've tried hard to be connecting to you through Sunday mornings and throughout the week. But it feels a bit like a vacuum. We do our stuff, we push end, and we send it out. And sometimes we hear back feedback, sometimes we don't. But you need to know that your feedback matters. Your little note that says, this is great, or thanks for this, or a longer email that shares a bit of a story helps us. Because worship isn't a vacuum. We're not producing to dump it on you. We want to be in a relationship with you. Yes, we know it feels heady. Yes, we know we're missing each other. Yes, we're missing the touch. Yes, we know it's relational. But the laughter, the tears, the mistakes, the gifts of all of this matters to each and every one of us. And we can't wait until we're back in the building. Anna's told me that the new church is called Viscal, which is Visical, a combination of physical and virtual. And so as we play and wonder about what new church is going to be like, we will physically come back when it's safe for everyone. And when everyone can come back, not just some. But we also recognize that there are going to be people around the world who are still going to want to connect to us. And so that's a challenge for us. It means, how do we have good stewardship for this church? Because it takes resources. Right now, our givings are down. Just saying it. We have lost rentals. We have lost permanent renters. We've lost some of the services we normally do that generate income. So our giving is down. And we need your support if you're able to help us. We're also aware that you may be struggling, that people have lost their jobs. Calgary is a city that's got a big question mark over its head right now, what we will be post-COVID. I think some cities in the country are going to thrive even greater. I'm not so sure with Calgary yet, and that grieves me. I've lived here 28 years. Will we be a city that's able to be creative and imaginative and step into the future? And similarly for the church, there'll be some churches in the United Church that will close when COVID comes to an end. They won't be able to maintain their congregation. There'll be amalgamations, there'll be new formations, new partnerships with other churches for those who are doing similar things. I'm really actually excited about it. I still have sleepless nights, I still have anxiety, I get depressed, but I also am super excited about the possibility of church and the new church and the new way we might be about being faithful. We know there's so much bad religion out there that the work of speaking and being engaged in good religion matters. And one of the speakers that mattered a lot to me was on the apocalypse, Harry Meyer, reminding us it's not about the end of the world, it's about imagining what's being hidden. The veil has been pulled back, and we're looking at our health care, our care of seniors, our race relations, our relationships with our Indigenous people, our relationships with our young people. All of the education and business and church is under turmoil as we reimagine who we will become. And I think it's so important to imagine something new. Because one thing I do know about the scriptures is that God is always creating something new, inviting us not to go back, but to pay attention to what has happened so that we can step ever more boldly into the future. We are missing the incarnational church, the connection one to another. And the incarnation of the person of Jesus is what God looks like in the flesh. And so when we examine what Jesus said, what he was about in this present moment, this experience that we're in right now is deeply religious, deeply faithful. And we have to have eyes and hearts and minds and hands and feet to engage incarnationally with that story. So I want you to know that this has been a very difficult time for me personally, for our staff, but I believe that you have been well served by the senior staff. And when I say senior, not age, even though I'm 60 now, but Ann and Don and I meet regularly and are working very hard together to do the very best we can to provide for the church and to work with our other staff who are mostly part-time, who, whether it's in right relations work or LGBTQ justice work or in music or in congregational care or in kids space and youth or in finance, all of these people are working as hard as they possibly can to continue the church in a way we're learning day by day how to be the new church. And so I just wanted to share this with you because the congregational meeting is something, again, where we're presenting. And I wanted to be in conversation with you about how I believe your church is doing the very best we can to pay attention. We miss you a lot. We miss the relationship with you. But we are hoping you'll connect with us, that you'll respond in ways that you are able, so that your church can respond to the city and to the province and to the country and indeed to the world in ways that are faithful and compassionate and just. So that's all I got to say. And I really appreciate you listening to this. And I look forward to your questions. I look forward to your challenge. I look forward to your support. As Hillhurst United Church in 2020 steps ever more boldly, living our values of hospitality, spirituality, social justice, and risk into the future. May you continue to be with us virtually or physically as you're able, as we seek to do our very best with what God has given each and every one of us to do so. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you engage with us as you're able. Thank you. So, we've talked a lot about COVID, and of course that's the overarching crisis challenge that we've all been facing. And what's interesting is this virus has gone viral. And it's also opened up and awakened and disturbed and shaken the hornet's nest, which it should, for how we live our life and how we do things. And it's also exposed some incredible inequalities and some real problems as a culture around our workforce and our relationships one to another. And of course, the Black Lives Matter, which has been around for decades, suddenly comes to a head. You'll hear in my sermon yesterday the word kairos is not just about quality time or God time, but it's about when things come to a head. There's this opportune time, and so opportune time in that we're being shaken to hear the words "I can't breathe." It's not just George Floyd's "I can't breathe," which is a horrific death, but all of us feeling "I can't breathe" with the way things are. And so his death, which invited us to hear his story again. When you dig deeper and you hear that when he was a teenager, when someone asks him what he's going to do with his life, he says, "I want to touch the world." My goodness, did he touch and shake and poke the world about the way Black lives not only matter, but how they've been harmed in our racism, in my racism, our systemic racism. And we're opening that book, hopefully, in a way that makes lasting change for all lives. And in Canada, this issue's easier when it's an American issue, if you will. Of course, it's our issue too, but it's also our relationship with our Indigenous people, which is being awakened as we begin to examine our history, our colonial past, and try to move forward as a people. And then theologically, as I said in the sermon a few weeks when I talked about this, he also in his death called out Mama. Whether he had a vision of his mother who had died and gone before us, whether he could see her in his death, or whether he was calling out to God who is like a divine Mama. All of us call out to the divine Mama, or Papa, or Dada, or Spirit, or Guide, or Shepherd, or Friend. Call out to God in our time of need to help us move forward. And so we're dealing with that pandemic and all of the other struggles on top of the COVID experience. And we just need to be kind to ourselves. We need to be open to examine faithfully and fully the call that we have been called to step forward. So this is a lot, and it's heavy. But you know what? Your religious faith, your spiritual connection, all of these coming together will deepen your life and mine and will move us forward into where God is calling us. Uncertain as we are, trusting that God knows us, loves us, forgives us, and invites us to step forward anew. Behold, God is doing a new thing. May it be so. Thanks for listening. Now, I said I was done, and Anne said, you didn't talk about you. And I got to say something about that. So they say the best sermons are not about you, but they come from your experience. The best sermons are to you. And so you need to know that in all of this sermonic process, that we're human beings, that I'm human, the staff are human, you're human. And with that comes the collective grief I spoke about at the beginning. We have gone through shock and denial and anger and depression and acceptance by the hour. I personally have never struggled as much leading a church as I have in the last 3 months. I feel like I'm treading the water sometimes. Sometimes I've got great strokes, and sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. I know the other staff have felt this too. We're doing our best. At the beginning, it was funny. I had a friend who gave me good feedback, and friends can do that. They said, "You're flat and you're depressing." I was flat and depressing because that's what I was, and I think if I wasn't, that would have been a lie. You've also seen me high and joyful because I have been as well. And so I think in this whole process, you got to remember we're human beings, all of us, and we're doing our best through this process to minister with you, to speak with you, to reflect with you. Right now, a lot of our response is to the world, but it doesn't come in relationship with you. And so when we're doing what we're doing, you're getting the real stuff. But then know there's another whole layer of our tears, our sadness, our joy, our frustration, and our very best attempt to express theologically and faithfully what's important for us all collectively in that moment, in that time. But again, the work is yours to do, and not mine. And so I welcome you to do that work and trust that you are created, as am I, as a human being that feels things and knows things, that has frustrations and excitements that matter. So this is a human situation, even though I'm looking at an iPad screen. Know that we all miss you, and we can't wait till we can really engage fully in a conversation in the flesh someday soon. Thanks.